Hey, I'm Curious and I'm back at you from my studio, Salem 7 Music Studio, and today we're going to be giving you some tips, guidelines, and helpful information that will help you achieve decent sounding vocals in your recordings. Now, these tips are going to help you avoid distortion, help you avoid clicks and pops and every kind of plosives and sibilance. Now, you don't want to have these things in your recording, so these tips are going to help you avoid them as much as possible. Now let's head into the video and see, first of all, some of the things that you will need for a sound decent recording. So first of all, you're going to need, of course, your microphone. That's the first stage of recording. That's the first thing that makes contact with the object that you're trying to record. It could be a human being, a voice, it could be an instrument, whatever it is, the microphone is the first guy in the line of fire. Okay, now, so you need a microphone. It could be a condenser microphone, it could be a dynamic microphone. Now, this is a large diaphragm condenser microphone. It's best for recording vocals, that's why we're using it. So you have your vocals, of course, you have your shock mount to avoid and prevent any kind of vibrations that could transfer from the ground or from the environment through the mic stand onto the mic. You don't want to record the sound of your feet. You don't want to record the sound of the room and the vibrations from the wall. You want to record your voice or the instrument that you wish to record. In this case, we're recording vocals. So what you want is the best sound that could be captured by the microphone. So what you want to have, in addition to the microphone, is a shock mount. And you also want to have your mic stand, and the microphone and shock mount are firmly connected to the mic stand so that everything is firm and, snug. So nothing is shaking, nothing is vibrating, nothing is feeling loose. So everyone is comfortable and in the position that you want them to be. So we have the microphone, the shock mount, we have the mic stand. Now you need a proper mic stand, a strong mic stand that will be able to carry the microphone conveniently without dancing or shaking around. Now, even if I try to move this, I would have to apply some energy before the mic can actually move. Now, it's not going to move by itself. You don't want it moving by itself and dancing and shaking at every little vibration. You want it to be nice and solid. And that's what we have here. So next we have, of course, the cable connected to the microphone, and the cable goes straight into the preamp or mixer or audio interface, depending on how you record. Now, your signal chain has to be clean, and your signal chain has to make provision for a signal that will be loud enough to be captured by your digital audio workstation. All right, now in this case, so I'm recording into the preamp section of my Yamaha Auto R96 version 2, and I'm coming in on channel 3. So first of all, I have to make sure that my phantom power is on channel 3. Since we're using a condenser microphone, we have to make sure it's on. If it's off, it will be this way, and the red light or the red marks indicates that it's on channel 3. So what we need to do is raise the preamp gain a little bit so that we can have a decent signal coming in. Now 9 o'clock is fine, between 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock. If I was using a dynamic microphone, it would be closer to 12 o'clock. But with a condenser microphone, around 9 o'clock is fine. For this purpose, for this vocal, for this particular situation, 9 o'clock is fine. Now we don't need the pad because the purpose of the pad is to reduce the incoming signal by about 26 dB. And I don't need to reduce the volume or the intensity of the signal coming in. I don't need that. And also I don't need to turn on the insert switch because I'm not using outboard gear for the recording. Outboard EQs and compressors. There's no need for that. Now coming down to the channel, we have channel 3 here, and we have the fader set around 10, and that's enough for this particular session, for this particular recording, because we do not want it to be too loud going out of the mixer or too quiet. From here it goes to the audio interface, my Focusrite 8920, and it's coming in at channel 5, and I can see there's an indication that there's signal on channel 5. From this point it goes straight into the computer to my digital audio workstation Pro Tools, where it's being recorded. Now you can check in the description of this video to see the processing I did, the additional processing and effects applications I did on the vocals after recording. From the EQs to compression and de-essing, I did all that, and I'm going to reveal it in the description section of this video. You can check that right now. Now, looking at the audio signal coming into my digital audio workstation, you can see that the signal is coming in between 50% and 75% on the meter right there. And you want to see more green than any other color. Now, if all you see is green, that's fine. But if there's a little yellow here and there at some points, that's also fine. But you don't want too much yellow, and you absolutely do not want any red in that meter. You do not want any red. You just want green and maybe a little yellow at some louder parts of the recording. So the ideal indication should be between 50% of the meter and 75%. So now we've established the signal chain that we have. The microphone is connected to the preamp section of the mixer, which is then connected to the audio interface, which is then connected to the computer and records audio and the signal into the digital audio workstation. All right. Now, but before we hit the record button, we have to ensure that we are monitoring ourselves properly through the headphones. We need proper headphones that have both cans working properly so that when we wear them to record, both ears can hear what is being recorded and we can monitor ourselves properly. But now, for recording vocals, this is my advice. In order to monitor your pitch and your intonation properly, you have to leave out one ear partially open so that you can hear yourself slightly. Now, don't open it in such a way that the sound from the headphones will get back into the microphone, because that's going to cause some feedback that will destroy the recording. And you're going to have to start again and do multiple takes and all that. And nobody likes too many takes, right? So you leave one can slightly open on one ear so that you can hear the sound of your voice from the source and correct your pitch and intonation. All right, now we've settled all that, we can begin recording. But before we start, I want to advise that you are in a proper state of mind and that you are prepared for the recording. Now, some of the things that you shouldn't do before recording vocals is try to stay away from alcohol. Try to stay away from alcohol and cigarettes, because alcohol dries the body, causes some dehydration in your system, and you want your vocal cords as lubricated as possible. So don't drink and record vocals. Don't smoke and record vocals. These two things, just leave them. Leave them out entirely. That's my advice. But if you want to do that, not before recording vocals. Okay? So now that's one. Now also try and stay away from foods that are rich in dairy products. Foods that have a lot of milk, cheese, butter in them, biscuits that have butter and cheese in them, or oily stuff. Foods that have a lot of oil, stews and soups and stuff like that that are rich in oil, and even some natural fruits that have a lot of oil in them. Those are not things that you want to consume before recording vocals or before a performance at that. Now also try and make sure that the state of your mind is in the right place for a vocal recording. You don't want emotional problems and things like that to weigh you down before you record. You don't want to come into the studio session with a negative aura and a negative feeling. You want to be as open as possible, as ready for the recording as possible. You want your heart to be free of any kind of emotional weights. Even though our emotions help us perform some certain songs better, it's important to know that when a particular experience or when a particular emotion is draining you completely, it's not going to make any significant positive contribution to the recording or the performance. Now let's talk about proximity. Proximity in this sense has to do with the distance between the source of the sound, your lips, and the microphone itself. Now, bearing in mind that we're using a condenser microphone, which is very sensitive, the distance between the microphone and the source of the sound, which is our lips, has to be about between 7 inches and a foot, so that you can have enough room for the plosives and the sibilances to die in between, not die permanently, but to be reduced significantly within the space. Okay, so we don't want the excess exaggerated P and B sounds, S, Z, SH, CH sounds to make their way into the recording, because they would make our recording sound amateur. So we want to beat them down enough so that the ratio between the actual sound of our voice, the actual audio signal, and the sound of these consonants are reasonable and they sound natural. Okay, so but if the SH and the S's are too loud, then it's not natural, it's not a proper recording. We can't use it in the song, we can't use it in the voiceover or wherever we want to use it. All right, so the proximity is important. And then now between the pop shield and the microphone itself, that's going to be about 4 to 5 inches, and the distance between our lips and the pop shield is another 4 to 5 inches. So there's enough room to reduce the sounds, the emphasis and the intensity of the plosives and the sibilants. Now, of course, for singing more emotional songs, depending on the kind of song you're singing, now you may want to lean in a bit to have a more intense and a more intimate sound in the recording. For singing ballads and for singing calm songs that really need to convey the emotion and the intensity and urgency of the song and the message, you may want to lean in a bit. Also, for heavy singing, when it involves belting out a particular section of the song, you may want to lean back a little bit so that you don't overload the signal, so that the voice does not get too loud that it creates a distortion and then you hear a crackle in the recording signal. Now, you don't want to have that, so you lean back a little bit to reduce the intensity and the sound of your voice going into the signal chain. So for that intimate sound, you want to come closer to the microphone so that the listener hears your voice closer than it would sound if you were 4 to 5 inches away from him. And for that section of the song that involves belting out your voice so that you achieve the passion and the energy of that section, you have to lean back a bit. Okay? So lean in for the intimate parts and lean back for the aggressive parts. Alright, so now that we're done with the tips and helpful information, we might as well go ahead and record some vocals. But before then, take note of these things, write them down, be mindful of them anytime you want to record, so that you can always guarantee solid, clean, decent vocal recordings. Okay, so I'm Akurios, and I'll see you next time.
When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Lord will raise a stand against him. When he throws temptations at you,